Hello, today is Monday, May 6th, and welcome to episode 332 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Senior Fellow Morgan Vigna, and I'm joined today by my fellow Senior Fellows, Lester Munson, Bishop Garrison, and Andy Kaiser. Today we are discussing yesterday's rocket attack by Hamas on the Kerem Shalom border crossing between Israel and Gaza. Kerem Shalom is the main humanitarian aid site in southern Israel. The strike killed 3 IDF soldiers and wounded nearly a dozen. The rockets were fired from Rafah, where Israel has been threatening a full-scale incursion for what feels like months now. Kerem Shalom is now closed, though Israel notes that other border crossings remain open. In response, Israel launched a counterattack, striking the trucks the rockets were launched from, as well as a nearby military structure. These latest events continue to dim the chances for a hostage deal that has been negotiated in Cairo. Meanwhile, World Food Program Director Cindy McCain announced yesterday in an interview on Meet the Press that northern Gaza is experiencing a full-blown famine that's working its way south. It was also revealed that the Biden administration last week halted a shipment of ammo that was slated to go to Israel. This is the first time since the October 7th attack that the U.S. has stopped a weapons shipment intended for the IDF. Les, there was a hostage deal on the horizon here. Israel was going to give up a lot, including agree to a lengthy ceasefire. Hamas hits Kerem Shalom. It seems like Hamas is deliberately trying to thwart an opportunity for a cessation in hostilities. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's, first of all, Morgan, I congratulate you on including, I think, NSI's first ever junior fellow in the podcast. Well done. On Gaza. I think it's instructive on our concerns about the humanitarian situation, which are legitimate and super important, and we do need to address them, that we might be looking at kind of the Hamas approach to this situation through rose-colored glasses. I think it is completely absurd to be attacking a humanitarian aid access point during this conflict, and really signals that we may not be understanding exactly where that side of the conflict is coming from, at least in public, at least in some of the things that in particular the administration has been saying. So I think we should all kind of take a hard lesson from this, that things are not exactly as we want them to be in Gaza.
Yeah. So, Bishop, the Biden administration desperately wants to see a ceasefire here. We saw them take an abstention in the UN Security Council a few months ago, calling for a ceasefire in that resolution. Biden has been highly critical of the Israeli government, especially Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, for the way the Israelis have really prosecuted this war. Do you think Biden is in the right here for withholding this ammunition shipment? And do you think we're likely to see more of this?
Yeah, I think President Biden is really showing some leadership for the international community on this piece. I think that we are more likely than not to see more of this until Benjamin Netanyahu steps forward and leans into finding a peaceful way to resolve this conflict. I think Les really hit the nail on the head here. I said this, I think, a couple podcasts ago when we discussed Israel-Hamas previously. This is a humanitarian crisis. In the modern day, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of over 30,000 deaths, mostly civilian deaths, mostly women and children. And the totality of what we're talking about here, and that's just the deaths. That's not the continued, heinous, horrible, unlivable conditions that we're talking about with regard to the kinetic activity that has caused this situation overall. We're continuing to see this just exponentially grow. We're going to have to see the Israeli government do something to take solid steps into resolving this issue. And right now, we're not seeing that. So one of the pressure points that President Biden has at his disposal is this aid and this aid package. And we want to see them take a step back and move towards some type of ceasefire peace talks before this just continues to escalate and become somehow even worse than it already is now.
So, Andy, clearly we've got an election coming up here in November. Is Biden just trying to placate his Democratic base and secure that youth vote. They've clearly been highly, highly critical of Biden's, support for Israel these past 6-7 months. Do you think this withholding of assistance is just another political move to advance his prospects in November?
I don't, but like anything in Washington in an election year, it's certainly colored by that activity. And I do think the Democratic position has managed to sort of honk off both sides, which can be tricky to do. I mean, you take a place like my home state of Michigan, where you have the largest Arab American population outside of the Middle East, along with the 5th largest Jewish American population in the country. And it's a very difficult needle to thread. Along with that, you see some slippage in the president's approval rating among younger voters. So, I think that's why you're seeing a lot of interest in this campus activity. They don't want to be too harsh. On one hand, they don't want to see too much vandalism or, other actions that would put off sort of the middle that will decide the election here in those key 7 battleground states, including my home state of Michigan. So I think they're in a difficult position. It's a difficult needle to thread. Sometimes I think it's an easier political position when you've just always had one, which is we're going to support our Democratic ally in Israel. Everyone knows where you stand, and you're not having to, provide all this kind of strange nuance and tie yourself into pretzels.
Well, Andy, following up on this, given that you are from Michigan, I want to sort of take advantage of that. How much do you think the uncommitted vote is actually going to, play a role in the November election here? I mean, Michigan is in a critical electoral college state. Clearly, the Biden administration has to be worried about this uncommitted vote.
Yeah, I think they are. It's a complicating factor for sure. On the Republican side, though, you have the Nikki Haley voters who you're familiar with, Morgan, who may have some similar heartburn about voting for Donald Trump. So it's going to make for one for the ages for sure this year.
Got it. Well, there you have it. That is a wrap. Thanks so much to Devlin Burney, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Wednesday, May 8th, for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. Fault Lines is now on YouTube, so check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you saw or heard, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.